In this lesson, I'm going to demonstrate how to work with Python idle and Python interpreter. So once Python is installed, essentially two executables are installed with it. You can either open up the Python shell, which is 3.5.0 version, or you can open up the Python interpreter as well, which again is 3.5 version. So in this instance, I've opened up both of these so we can take a look at and see how Python works and what the difference is between these two. First, I'm going to talk about, on the right side of the screen is the Python interpreter. Notice I can of course drag and drop. It is just a command. It is just a program, that executable program that I can open. Okay, and if I close it and open it up again, it's going to bring this up. So I'm going to move this aside. Okay, the cursor is blinking, so it's asking me for input. So for instance, before I actually start working with these, just so you know that both of these are similar. Okay, so there's no difference in terms of execution of commands. So whichever command I execute here, I can also use the Python idle to execute the command on this line where my cursor is blinking. Okay, so either way, whether I'm using the interpreter or the idle, the command is the same. So it's still Python language, doesn't really matter. And you'll see the difference of why we use one or the other. First, I'm going to work with this area, which is the Python interpreter. So for instance, here, if I give Python a command such as 4 plus 6, hit the enter key on my keyboard, and it displays the result as 10. Pretty straightforward. And Python, by the way, is a simple language. As we move along, you'll notice as we start creating programs, things will be clear to you. But just to give you an example, I just took two numbers, 4 plus 6, and I added them together, hit the enter key on the keyboard, and the answer is 10. Now what happens when I go to my idle? Same thing, 4 plus 6, hit the enter key, and my result is displayed. The only difference obviously is the color coding, because the results are displayed in blue, and within my interpreter environment, it's just the prompt. Okay, so that's one of the differences. So as you're entering commands, it's much easier to work with the idle here as opposed to using the interpreter. Okay, great. Second, let's go to our interpreter one more time. So here, for instance, I'm going to say x equals 5 or 4, hit the enter key, and I'm going to say x equals x plus 5, hit the enter key, and I'm assigning just variables here, and I'm going to say print, let's move this aside, x, and it's going to say it's 9. Okay, same thing within my idle here. I can do the same thing. I can say x equals 4, hit enter, and then I'm going to say x equals x plus 5, hit enter, and I'm going to say simply print x within parentheses, and the answer is 9. Once again, notice the color coding. The print function is in a different color, the results are in different, output is in a different color, whereas within my interpreter here, it's just one single color and it's going line by line. Now what if I were to create a program, right? So this is fine. I can simply run the commands or tell Python to do something and it does it for me. But one of the shortcomings here obviously is that I cannot really edit any one of these. So for example, if I need to change the value of x from 4 to 8 or 10 or 9, I would not be able to do so. I would have to re-enter the entire set of commands. Okay, so I cannot really change this. And obviously within my interpreter environment, I'm also not able to change any one of these. I have to redo or retype. Well, that defeats the purpose of programming, because you need to be able to go back to your code and obviously change those things. So in essence, the Python interpreter is good for just testing whether your command works or not. Okay, so keep that in mind when you're working with Python. So typically you would just use the idle environment for the most part when you're working with Python. So typically you'll be working with the Python shell here as opposed to the Python interpreter. Okay, so I'm going to close the interpreter for now, and once again this is just to test whether your command or the input that you gave or the function or the variable works or not. Okay, so I'm going to close this for now, and here's my shell. Okay, now once again going back to my shell, I can again enter a set of series of steps or commands or use variables, functions, whatever I want to use, and it's going to give me the results. But recall, we talked about the fact that I cannot really go back and change any one of these. So what's the solution? So what Python does, it allows me to actually create a program. I can also do so in Notepad++ or any other editor and then run within the Python shell. But let's explore the menus first. First, I'm going to let you know what Python idle is. So about idle, if I click on help and just simply click on about idle, it gives me Python's integrated development environment. So now you know that idle stands for Python's integrated development environment. Okay, so this is where you would actually start using Python and start entering your code. Okay, so let's close out of here. So within this Python shell, some of the other menus are, for example, file, and within the file menu I have an option called new file. So if I click on the new file, it brings up another shell window. I'm going to move this aside, make this a little smaller so we can actually see. Okay, great. So this is where you would actually start typing your program, and then you would run it in the Python shell. Notice the set of menus are different as compared to the menus within the Python shell. For example, there's a run menu option here, whereas in the Python shell you don't see the run menu option. So let me give you an example here. So for instance, here if I type the same thing, so I'm going to say x equals 5, and the next line I'm going to say x equals x plus one more time 5, and then I'm going to print x. Okay, and notice it uses the same color coding, same set of commands, but if I hit enter in this area, nothing happens because I'm not executing this command anymore. All I'm doing is writing my code. So this is where you can always go back and change and start building your code. Obviously I'm using very basic examples, and in the next subsequent lessons I'll demonstrate what functions are, variables are, so you know. But right now we're just discussing and I'm demonstrating the Python shell and then the editor where you would build your code. Okay, so here's my simple code. If I need to run this code within the Python shell, obviously I can copy and paste here within the Python shell, or I can use the run menu and then it gives me the option to run this in Python shell. Okay. There's a shortcut also. I can use my keyboard to run this module by using the F5 key on my keyboard. Okay. Or I can simply click on Python shell, which takes me to the Python shell itself. But I need to run the module, so I'm going to click on run module, and of course it asks me to save the module first before it actually runs it. So I'm going to click OK to save it, and it brings up my window here, and I'm just going to call it first, and let's see if I can find where I would like to save. Here's my data files folder and a Python folder, and click save. And as soon as I click save, notice my results are displayed and the answer is 10. And Python also shows me the location of my Python program. So this is essentially a program. It's called first.py, and the location is displayed as well of where this Python program file is stored, which means in essence that I can always open this file anytime I like and then build my code. Okay, so this is a very powerful way where you can program in Python. So the interpreter, which we closed earlier, I'm going to reopen it one more time. Here's the interpreter. Okay, so this doesn't really allow you to build your code. It is just there to check whether your command is successful or not successful. Okay, which is similar to the Python shell here. Whereas the shell also allows you to write a set of lines and codes, but it gives you color coding that you can take a look at and see whether it's a valid function or not, or you've assigned the variables correctly or not. And then our editor here, which allows us to actually build the code, and I can save this file by giving it a name, and the file extension name is .py, or call it py. So here, for example, if I need to enter something else, let's say I'm going to say print, of course it's case sensitive, and I'm going to say something like hello world. If I do something incorrect, Python tells me that, hey, wait a minute here, it's not the correct syntax. So as soon as I type the correct syntax, notice it displays in color coding, so it tells me that, okay, fine, this works now. So hello world, and I can again build my module. If I need to run the program, I can simply click on run and run module. Of course, it saves the module first every time, and it displays my results. This time, if I need to change something here, for example, if I need to change the value of x from 5 to 7, I can easily do so within my editor, which I'm unable to do within my Python shell or the Python interpreter. So here, I've just changed the value from 5 to 7. I need to run it again, run module. Of course, save first, and notice here's my result. This time is 12. Okay, so this way, it's a powerful way to keep building programs. So in subsequent lessons, we'll be using the Python shell and the editor here, and we'll create several programs as we move along. And this is the core part of our course, where everything that we do, whether we learn about lists, dictionaries, variables, assignments, functions, reserved keywords, and so on. So we'll be using and creating several of these scripts. These are also called scripts, right? Because obviously you're telling the computer a set of commands, or using Python language, you're telling it to do something. Okay. Next, let me demonstrate a few sample demo programs in Python. Okay. Obviously, this is a program that we just created because it gives us something as an output. But within the Python shell, under the help menu, there is a turtle demo. I'm going to open that up. And this gives you several examples of Python programs. Okay, so for example, let's say I select the forest. So on my left is the code in Python. Don't worry about this, you'll get to this stage as well. Once we click start, notice it creates the program for us, and this is all built in Python language. Okay, so very powerful language, easy to use language as well. So if I click on start again, it's gonna run the program. Similarly, I can click and check other examples such as color mixer. Here's the Python code on the left. I click on start, and I can now in this instance drag, and it changes the color. Okay, so it just depends on what set of code you've written, and the output is displayed. Okay, so Python is very powerful. Let me close this demo. So in this lesson, once again, we took a look at the Python interpreter, the Python shell, and of course the editor where we actually write our programs. So practice. Hope this helps, and let's move to our next lesson.